Ladies and gentlemen, open banking pioneers, hello, and a big warm welcome to our first Campfire of 2022. What better topic to start the year than to discuss open banking trends around the world? Now, open banking in the UK has just marked its 4th anniversary, and we have an absolute huge amount to celebrate and to be incredibly proud of. With 4 million users and 26.6 million transactions. Now, in the UK, we created the blueprint for open banking. Others look to direction to the UK for lessons learned. And as we heard from Aristides from the Central Bank in Brazil, when we launched our Familia out in Brazil, they actually flew to the UK and talked to all of the CMA9. And we also see that from our audience figures, with now an amazing 51 countries all in all tuning in to listen to our campfires. Just phenomenal. So a huge thank you to everybody for that. Now, today we're going to be discussing trends around the world in open banking, what the UK needs to do to retain its lead, and for the first time, take a closer look at the HMRC use case. With an incredible 2.6 billion pounds of transactions processed, they must be the gold-plated use case that inspires other nations around the world. We're also launching our Shine a Light section. Now, this is a rapid-fire questions that will showcase a fintech that you may not have heard much about before, yet are igniting industry change. To get a truly global and diverse view of our sector, where it's heading and the direction of travel, we've actually created a OBE Megatrends report, and you can actually download it from the GIF below. Now, this has been compiled by industry leaders and academics. Now, it'll absolutely not surprise you that I talk about open banking all day, yet when I read everybody's compilations, I truly was energized and really inspired. So I hopefully you'll feel the same. But I would like to say a big thank you to everybody that has generously contributed their insight and shared their predictions, and also to the OBE team, who I know have burnt the midnight oil to get this ready in time. So everybody, a thank you for that one. Now, talking of being inspired, that is a super segue to introduce our first guest speaker, John Glenn, MP, Economic Secretary to HM Treasury. Now, John and I both sit on a MasterCard financial and digital inclusion panel, and it's an absolute privilege to do that. That's a topic that is in our DNA at OBE. So John, thank you for walking the extra mile. I know that you couldn't join us in person today. So absolutely delighted to share the message you've recorded for us with everybody. So John, over to you. Let's hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much to Helen and Open Banking Excellence for inviting me today and for assembling such an impressive panel. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you, though I regret very much that other commitments have prevented me from attending in person. As many of you will know, I became Economic Secretary in January 2018. And as some of you will also be aware, that was the same month that the open banking was launched in the United Kingdom. So over the past 4 years, I've had a ringside seat on the development of this initiative. And I believe that it has driven real progress. It sparked new fintech innovations and brought huge gains for consumers, helping them to stick to budgets, cut unnecessary spending, and of course build their savings. It's no surprise, therefore, that open banking has really taken off, and the number of people using these services rose by 60% last year to 4.5 million, with 1 million more signing up every 6 months. But it's not just consumers who are reaping open banking's rewards. Some 600,000 small businesses are also benefiting, saving on average £1,000 a month. So that's fantastic progress in terms of bringing this initiative into the mainstream. But even as we reflect on this success, we cannot afford to rest on our laurels as we move into 2022. The UK may have been the first country to develop open banking standards, but we're determined to keep moving forward. In July, we're expecting to conclude the open banking roadmap, and the coming months will include some major steps, such as the introduction of variable recurring payments for sweeping. I'm sure that this will prove to be an invaluable money management tool for customers. For instance, by helping them to avoid unplanned overdraft fees by automatically transferring money between accounts whenever their funds fall below a certain level. And just as we said in the government's payment landscapes review, along with the payment systems regulator, we're prioritising unlocking open banking enabled point of sale payments. And this will allow people to securely pay for goods and services straight from their bank accounts without using a debit or credit card. I've no doubt that this advance will be a real boost to competition and will spark even greater innovation in the payment space. And of course, longer term, we want to see open banking's transformative advances reflected in the wider financial services sector too, through open finance, and this will be the area of future focus. So today is an opportunity to share experiences and ideas, as well as to focus on what more we can do to keep the UK sector as competitive as possible. Needless to say, I very much welcome engagement, so don't ever hesitate to get in touch with me and my office. We have a brilliant opportunity to use the power of fintech to unlock enormous benefits for consumers, for businesses, and for the financial services industry. So let's together seize it with both hands. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, John. And wow, that certainly has set the opening for our year and our first campfire. I am thrilled now to hand over the mic to Sanjib from Money 2020 to continue our conversation. Now, he starts with a fireside chat with Ron Khalifa, who you all know, and he continues with what can only be described as a world-class panel, very appropriately, as we are talking about trends around the world. And judging from the briefing call, you're in for a lively, informed and provocative debate. So thank you, Sanjib. Over to you.
Thank you, Helen. It's truly an honor to be here at the Open Banking Excellence Campfire. Amazing program today, so really honored once again to have your presence here as well, and looking forward to the program ahead. Our first guest is actually someone who I've known for many years, Ron Khalifa. Ron Khalifa is, obviously a veteran in the industry, and really excited to hear some of his insights. Thank you very much for being here, Ron.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
So, Ron, you and I have known each other for many years, and we've seen the industry evolve on a global basis, which is, I think, quite unique. Given your unique perspective, where does the UK sit?
Look, Sanjib, I think the UK is really well positioned. The UK today is a market leader. It's got a 10% global market share. And it's interesting, when you actually compare it with market size in the States, it's probably about on a par. It represents about £11 billion in revenue. It contributes about £5.3 billion in GVA. And there are thousands of fintech companies in the UK. And the financial services sector is essentially at the heart of fintech. We talk about this terminology called fintech, but the reality is we're talking about financial services companies that are using technology. Now, frankly, whether you're talking to a small company or a large bank, they describe themselves as a fintech. I've spent time talking to most of the large UK CEOs, bank CEOs, and they describe themselves as a fintech. Now, many years ago, that would have been laughable. but it just helps you get a sense of how they think about their business. So Financial Services UK employs over 1 million people. And then when you start thinking about the level of investment that has actually come in to the UK, over the last year, the level of investment has increased by over 200% to about £11 billion. And that's second only to the US firms globally, which saw about $46 billion of investment. So the UK is consistently leading the European investment destination. It's ranking second to the States, but actually when you add up the rest of Europe, the big 4 other countries, Germany, Sweden, France, Switzerland, the level of investment in the UK is more than that's happening in those markets. So, we're really well positioned in terms of that. The pandemic has also provided a seismic shift in digital adoption of financial services. The statistic that I'm always fascinated by is that around 6 million people, that's 12% of the adult population in the UK, downloaded a banking app in the very first month of lockdown last year. So you get a sense that people have really made the shift. Now, not every one of those are going to stay using that, and some will migrate to branches or go back to branches. But the reality is that I think we've seen a shift in consumer behavior. But the reality is that competition is fierce. And we've got in the UK 20 fintech unicorns. The US has got 96. So the reality is that the review that I did last year, was essentially trying to portray a position of strength, but also trying to create a roadmap for what needs to happen going forward. And the good thing is that the UK government has acted very positively, and it wants to maintain its position as a dominant fintech hub by supporting many of the recommendations.
Those are some impressive numbers, and some of those numbers are actually quite unthinkable even a few years ago. Supporting fintech businesses and innovation is a key aspect of the review. What are the pieces that are required for this? How is the FCA moving forward in terms of implementation of a scale box for growth?
Yeah, we I think in the UK have set the benchmark for policy-led innovation. And that's proven not only by open banking, but also by the very fact that 50 other countries have now replicated the regulatory sandbox that the UK, the FCA, introduced in 2017. So that was the first one, and now there are 50 around the world that do broadly the same thing. The recommendation to review for a scale box was about building on this good work to provide a suite of enhanced support for businesses that are not just starting up, but actually scaling up. That's where the problem and the challenge in the UK has been. We have an abundance of startup businesses that are startup, but what's not happened is that they haven't really been able to get enough momentum to scale up. So that's what the scale box is essentially about. There was a lot of feedback that I was getting from many fintechs who were just saying that they felt exposed to the full sort of gambit of regulation once they'd graduated from the sandbox. So the FCA have responded to the recommendation for a scale box in a couple of ways. The first is that they're enhancing the regulatory sandbox, which is now open all year round, as opposed to just on a cohort basis. So this is now a permanent offering. Additionally, through what they've called a fintech nursery, they're providing extra support for newly licensed firms, and this will support firms post-authorization. Thirdly, by establishing a digital sandbox, this is a sort of digital testing environment that'll enable innovators to build, to develop and validate their technical products through access to data and targeted ecosystem support. So, there's a suite of things that the FCA has responded to, which I think are really positive and help to pave the way to drive to scaling up the businesses that are so vital for the future of the economy here. Because they'll be the ones that will be creating the jobs. They'll be the one that will be helping in terms of leveling up. And they'll be the ones that will be helping in terms of international trade as well.
Actually, Ron, I think what you're talking about lines up very well with my experiences. I remember a few years ago putting together one of the Money 2020 events. the FCA made itself available for open office hours, which I think was quite forward thinking. And I was able to use that to get other regulatory bodies in other jurisdictions to do the same. So, it's clearly a case where the UK was leading. And I think the report you've written, does shine a path, to lead the way. A key section of the review is dedicated to the creation of the Center for Finance, Innovation and Technology, or CFIT, and we understand that it's received some seed funding. Where are we so far in terms of the establishment of the center? Is it physical? Is it virtual? And what are some of the likely outcomes that you hope to see from it?
CFIT, or the Center for Finance, Innovation and Technology, was a very important recommendation from my point of view. And the reason for that was that in the UK, we've got about 30 different organizations that are working very well intentioned to try and bring fintechs together and help. But it was lacking coordination. So the overarching purpose of CFIT, the Center for Finance, Innovation and Technology, and notice that it's not about fintech, it's actually about fast growth companies that need help and support. So it's really to help them get a coordinated approach to market development. The Treasury, HM Treasury in the UK here, had said that they plan to operate CFIT using what I've called a coalition model, a little bit similar to something called the Green Finance Institute, which is a proving point that I saw that was already in operation. So these coalitions will basically be convening forces that bring together actors from across the value chain. Think about policymakers, think about data providers, think about fintechs, think about incumbents and investors to address specific fintech challenges relating to themes such as digital ID, open banking, open finance, SME lending. We've got to work out what it's going to be, but that's the way to think about it. But also CFIT, I think, will look to provide enhanced connectivity across the geographic regions in the UK, and also a research and development function. The current plans are for it to operate as a virtual entity. There's no point in having a physical entity, not just because of what's happened in the last couple of years, but importantly, you don't need to do that. And as long as we are efficient and thinking it through in the right way, then I think that will work. So the Treasury has confirmed that as part of the spending review, they've allocated seed funding for a period of initially for a couple of years, 2-3 years. They've also confirmed that they intend to work with the City of London Corporation to operationalize CFIT, and work is still in its very, very early stages. I've set up, or I'm setting up a steering committee, and that's the plan that we'll start to do. We haven't done it yet, to try and ensure that we've got a clear purpose in terms of governance, in terms of how we go forward, in terms of how we define what needs to be done, but also it allows those that are interested in financial innovation to develop a robust business plan for CFIT to help select some initial coalition topics that will have a positive impact on UK fintech. So very early days, we've got a lot of work to do, but I think it's fantastically positive that the government has said, yeah, we recognize this sector is one that we want to invest in. And by doing this, I think it'll help propel it going forward.
That's great. And for the audience that want to keep tabs of CFIT's activities, any timelines, or when do you think they should expect to hear something from?
Yeah, there's always a sort of a poison chalice in that question, isn't there? Because you set expectations. But I think the review was launched last February, so I think it'll probably have more momentum and more announcements 1 year after the review is launched. So probably in the coming weeks, you'll hear more about it, and we'll try and make sure that we give some indications of how you can feed into it and how you can contribute. There's already been such a lot of interest from fintechs, from regulators, from some of the largest tech firms who kind of want to play and help, make this come to life.
How have your views on open banking evolved and changed, and even thinking about it maybe in the UK context, global context, obviously a lot of change there. Where do you see things heading?
Look, I think the UK has been a leader for all the reasons you said, but it's not that old a product. It's not that old an activity. Open banking technology has only been live since, I think, November 2018. It's really sort of led to the creation of a host of new startups, which has raised hundreds of millions of dollars in new venture capital investment. Credit Kudos, Moneybox, WageStream, Snoop. I mean, there's a lot of these very, very good organizations that are out there. Also, there are now over 2.5 million open banking payments a month in the UK. That compared with just about 320,000 across the entirety of 2018. So the good thing is, it doesn't matter on the numbers. The answer is it's growing, and it's growing quickly. But globally, the value of payments made through open banking is estimated to reach about 110, 120 billion dollars over the next few years. By 2026, it was 4 billion in 2021. So you can see how this has evolved. So look, let's be straightforward about it. Implementation has not been perfect, and there are a number of challenges, and we're still, I think, in the relatively early stages of the journey. But it has shown that open banking enables an evaluation of a person's financial situation and a behavior 4 times faster than it could potentially be done otherwise. There's a lot of data that supports that fact. Open banking can also create better outcomes for customers in a range of different ways. So, right now the technology is predominantly being used from only a risk perspective. In other words, by lenders who are judging loan applications. That's really the kind of mainstay application that's being used. There are other things obviously out there. But in fact, what's interesting is that open banking has led to about a 15% increase in acceptance rates on loans, and about a 6% reduction in default rates. So you can see some positive momentum building in terms of that. But I think open banking can offer much more than this. It can inform personal finance tools and budgeting apps. It can also provide solutions for merchants and small businesses to save money and to get a better service. But I think it's also got the potential to unlock even more innovation. And it now needs to evolve, realizing that full potential of open finance, as we described in the FinTech review. Open finance has the ability to radically, and I mean radically, shift business models and solve age-old problems, which just haven't been able to be resolved. And once these things are rolled out, I think it's going to allow things like the development of financial dashboards in a much more usable, structured way. It'll bring together customer data such as investments, savings, and cash flow all in one place. We're starting to see some early seeds of that, but that will become a universal activity. I think it'll also allow customers to be offered tailored products in a much more personalized way and at a better deal. So open finance is what I'm really excited about. We just now need our regulators to go bold and get on with this and make it happen. And I think it will happen.
Well, thank you very much, Ron. Every time I meet with you, I feel like I learned something new, and today was no different. And also thank you for getting this campfire started off with some great warmth of knowledge and of your insight. And now, as Helen mentioned, we have a world-class panel right now. It is truly my pleasure. And if I even just talked through like the highlights of the bullet points of accomplishments, we wouldn't have time to listen to them. So today's panel includes Nick Ogden from RTGS, Charlotte Croswell from OBE, David Head from MasterCard, Nick Down from HMRC, and James Hickman from EcoSpend. So thank you everyone for being here. And so I guess like the first question that I wanted to jump right into as the fire is burning bright is, what does the UK need to do to continue to set the pace in open banking in terms of infrastructure, regulatory, consumer protection, and inclusion, financial and digital, or expertise? But perhaps if I can ask, anyone want to start? How about you, David Head? David, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Sanjeev. So yeah, no, I think you're right. It becomes clear that UK have been leading, and if you look at what's made the UK market successful compared to other markets in Europe. One was starting earlier, but the other was putting in place consistency and standards, and getting everybody following those. And I think more of that and following that through will maintain that position. There's still friction we can take out of in the UK market in terms of the way different banks have different payment limits and things like that. So I think there is more friction we could take out, which is kind of one level. But I think in terms of, the thing that could make the UK famous is the opportunity now to move from an environment and show how to transition from an environment whereby open banking has been very regulatory driven to one where it's becoming much more of a commercial ecosystem. And how do you navigate that and bring all parties to bring greater functionality, richer propositions, and greater protection to customers in a safe and controlled environment?
That's great. And anyone else want to jump in? How about Nick Ogden?
Yeah, hi Sanjeev. Yeah, I think it's interesting because we were chatting yesterday in the pre-call of all of this that looking back 15 years ago, we were just going into the start of the global financial crisis, which was largely caused by the banks not knowing where their money was, which people on this call might find surprising. But yet we know today the number 15 also reappears because $15 trillion is the cost of the financial friction that the global infrastructure costs everybody who's listening to this conference today. And that's ridiculous because the financial friction means that the visibility of liquidity, which caused the last global financial crisis, still exists. And I think that, open banking, I think over the course of the last few years, as we've heard, from John and Ron earlier on, has made some massive strides, but is still right at the edge of the opportunity that it has to exploit. And unless the core infrastructure is resolved, all of the great payment initiatives that have been moving around, many that have been started over the course of the last few years, can't reach their full potential because they hit the buffers of slow infrastructure. So I think that there's a combination of what we need to do in relation to retail and business open banking, but also to continue to apply very significant pressure to the payment schemes and the regulators and the Treasury in the UK and globally out to the other 180 central banks around the world in relation to saying, look, we have to fix this problem. It is actually a systemic risk to the whole financial services industry and an inhibitor to innovation and customer service. And customer service, as we now know, as the result of the last 2 years of pandemic, is critical because everybody expects a real-time, on-time, every-time digital experience.
Amazing. Great point, Nick. Charlotte, can I go over to you and get your thoughts on what the UK needs to do to keep ahead, stay ahead?
Thank you. And as many people know, I worked on with Ron Khalifa on the FinTech review when I was running the industry body Innovate Finance, and I was always excited about the art of the possible. But in the art of the possible and the coalition of the willing, as often described, you can do a certain amount. And what we have seen in the UK, there's this incredible coalition where we've had banks with the entrepreneurs looking to disrupt them, with the regulators, with the policymakers. And when we were all together in the square mile, many of those people were actually within 20 minutes of each other. And bringing that together, I think has really helped in developing that early thinking into FinTech and what could come beyond it. And then we look at what underpins that, and obviously open banking is just so crucial on that. So people often debate with me saying, was it the competition remedy that brought us forward, or would have been better as a market-driven approach, as we've seen in other countries? But what's quite clear when we look at the experience in the UK versus Europe is that commitment to those open banking standards has been absolutely instrumental in success and building the foundations of whatever comes next. And sometimes the numbers don't really tell the true story of just how many people rely now on this technology to get that data there, to make the payments there, to make this more efficient. So I think what we have is that entrepreneurship and perhaps initial resistance from the bank, should we say, to embrace the technology, especially when you're using legacy systems, has now resulted in some incredible coming together of industry. And I'm always very excited when people, such as people on the screen here, talk about what can come next as a result of what the UK's done. And we have this amazing opportunity now to sit there, having looked at all the work that's been done by the ecosystem, by the regulators, to now drive ourselves forward. What we can't afford to do is lose momentum. We don't want, it frustrates me, and I think many others, when we see other countries, quite remote parts of the world now, putting out their open finance and their smart data strategy. But what we have is this amazing open banking foundation that's been done. And as we transition this from a competition remedy into whatever comes next, I think it's really clear that we have to bring that momentum there. We have to bring the industry and all the industry together, not just the fintechs, all the banks, but everyone together. And we really have that strategic thinking. And I think that's really important. So it's exciting to see the outputs coming in from the Khalifa review of how that could be taken forward and the role that plays. But most importantly, we have to bring the ecosystem with us and get industry alignment, and then obviously regulatory support and sponsorship for driving us forward. So we don't lose momentum. Things are happening quickly at the moment, and around the world, the pace of change is forever accelerating, mostly driven by consumers and small businesses who want to see a better experience of financial services, who want to sit there and use this as a way to getting to economic recovery post-COVID. And we mustn't forget that this is about the outcomes it delivers, and then the innovation that's needed to support that.
That's amazing, and I think the comment about alignment actually is critical. And actually, if I can ask Nick Down to speak to your perspectives on open banking in the UK, because obviously you needed to be aligned with this whole initiative. I would love to get your thoughts on at least initial thoughts on this.
Sure. Hi, Sanjeev. Yeah, I suppose I'm a latecomer to the party from the public sector, and I've been struck, as Charlotte said, by the sense of kind of community and balance around this, which I think is a real asset for the UK if we can continue it. That regulation and innovation are advancing in step. We've made some rapid progress with the numbers. What I think will be interesting is if we can produce a series of use cases, possibilities that customers find attractive, and larger numbers come on board, then the dynamics start to get really favorable. There'll be far more transactions. That will drive down transaction costs. That in turn will make using open banking services more attractive, help to kind of create a lasting competitive advantage for the UK, and potentially that's a very, very powerful state to generate. You can see that all sorts of ways there could be missteps in getting there, but at the moment I think we're pretty well placed.
That's great, and thank you for bringing it to, I guess, the reality of that customer and what's happening. And you've done so from a large organization perspective. Actually, if I can ask James Hickman to comment, once again about the UK open banking, and I guess you've got you're looking at it from a different perspective, and would love to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely, Sanjeev, and thank you very much. And I think it's testament really that we have a brilliant use case in the form of HMRC, and huge kudos to Nick and his team for really rolling out what has been, I think, quite a successful solution. And we're obviously very pleased to be a part of that. But I would say, in answer to your question, that everything starts and finishes with the customer. And to Ron's stats at the beginning around the adoption of smartphone banking apps, I mean, it is staggering now that we are so used to banking through a screen in the palm of our hand, and the momentum that we've built up, both driven by the government and more recently by the OBIE, I think we're in a very, very strong position. I think we just need to continue to capitalize on that and really identify those use cases, such as perhaps those like HMRC, where the consumer really can benefit, where the organization collecting the transaction payments can also benefit, and where there's almost like a perfect outcome. So I think it's about identifying those great opportunities and really capitalizing on them and continuing that momentum that the government and OBIE have created.
That's great. And just to quickly, I was writing notes as everybody was answering, and I think from David, talking about being commercial led or market led, from Nick Ogden, talking about systemic risk, and then from Charlotte, sort of talking about the ecosystem alignment and commitment. Nick Downs talking about use cases and possibility of getting more users, and James, talking about how it starts and finishes with the consumer or customer. So actually, just from that simple answer, you could hear the breadth of ways of looking at this, and which speaks to a little bit of the opportunity as well as the risk of open banking. And I think on one of our in the prep call, and we're warmed up in front of the campfire now, and let me maybe put a little bit of gasoline onto the campfire. So let's talk about open. The term open. Open speaks to sort of the institution perspective, the business perspective. But if I'm a consumer and thinking about my data, is open the right terminology? Is that the right way of thinking about it? And I like, if I could start off with Nick Ogden, I think you probably have some interesting thoughts on this.
Yeah, I was with David Birch. Everybody on this call knows David Birch. When we launched the Nesta initiative for retail sponsorship, £1.5 million was given to businesses who were basically putting together open banking initiatives to kickstart retail banking. And before our presentation kicked off, we were having a conversation with somebody and said, what are you talking about today? And I said, we're talking about open banking. He said, oh, great. He said, does that mean the banks are opening on Saturday morning? Because that's really what we want. And, I know everybody's laughing on this. You can't see all the other panelists, but trust me, they're all giggling away. But that's the problem. Sometimes if you describe something that the industry understands, Mrs. Smith of 3 Acacia Gardens, who's the target person who actually want to use this, it misses her by the proverbial country mile. And, I've mentioned this on a couple of times, and I think that we really do need to just, go into a quiet corner with some Kool-Aid and work out really what we're trying to sell here, because everybody in the industry knows what we're trying to do. But I think our ability to get mass consumer update is to a degree restricted by what we actually call it. Sorry about that, Charlotte.
No, I mean, I agree with you though, Nick, and I say the same. See, people don't understand it, and I feel terrible when you're named open banking implementation entity that you actually don't agree with necessarily the term open banking, but it doesn't mean anything to anybody. What does that actually mean? When you talk about what HMRC are doing, pay by bank transfer, people understand what that means. They understand it. So I do think we have to be careful that we don't lose people in the terminology. And we can come to VRPs later, but I said to people, nobody understands what a VRP is, apart from the people actually developing the VRPs themselves. So it's a bit like when you go and pay for your Uber and that API that goes between Uber and the payments. People don't need to know about that piece of technology. They just need to know it works, and they need to know it's trusted and your data is protected. So I think we do have to be careful not to lose those consumers that we're trying to convert in terminology. And also, Nick, hopefully that they actually do see this as an alternative to going to their bank on a Saturday, Sunday, and they don't need to do that either.
Yeah, I mean, Mastercard's got a huge marketing team, and Nick Down can act as the moderator to decide whether what they come up with works. James can give it the thumbs up, so we're done.
Yeah, it's one of those things in terms of, it's almost as if you don't need the term open banking. In terms of, when we've seen the most successful use cases, people are just paying off their credit card or they are getting faster loans. The ones that we've seen that we've enabled, the word open banking just doesn't appear. So consumers don't need it. They need the confidence in the entities that they're dealing with and a really, really easy and slick user experience. And that's what they are buying and that's what they love. And so, yeah, you don't need, we'd waste our time and the marketing team's efforts coming up with an alternative name. It's about what it does, not what it is.
That's great. And I think actually, if I can ask Nick Down to comment a little bit on the term open, and as far as how they've implemented it, have they heard any? What's the customer response been like? Any light that you can shed on this discussion?
I think it's kind of a trick of perspective, isn't it? This is a little along the lines of David's reaction too, that we've integrated it into how people, the options they have to pay HMRC. It's up there at the front because we think it's a really good way to pay, and it's worked. We've had over 1 million payments, over £2.5 billion paid in 10 months since going live. But people are seeing that as how I pay my tax. We talk about open banking, but that's from a different perspective. So I think it's the quality of the services, the way they're marketed, how compelling they are, and people will use them without even realizing that actually that's more open banking happening. So I too would focus on that rather than the kind of umbrella label.
That makes sense. And I think obviously open banking is a relatively new initiative. And whenever you're starting something new, there's always a challenge with building trust. And actually, if I can ask James Hickman to comment about that, from starting something new and enabling building trust, from consumers as well as on the institutional side and the ecosystem side. Any thoughts on that, James?
Absolutely. And I think what we are doing with this technology, as we all know, is disrupting a status quo. And with that comes resistance from established incumbents. So I guess that's just a question of time, and it's a question of proving the value, particularly to the banks. And I think, it's worth pointing out how supportive and accommodating the banks have really been in allowing us to get to this point. I think from a customer point of view, it's back to that level of intuitiveness. It is very intuitive to use your biometric ID to trigger your banking app and to do something within your banking app. And I think about 80% of customers now have this device or this capability, and they're just doing something that they kind of are very used to doing. So it reminds me, I guess, of that Bill Gates quote, when you think about innovation and development of societal sort of change, that we overestimate, the change we think that's going to happen in 2 years, but we underestimate the change that happens in 10. You suddenly wake up and everyone's got an iPhone from having had a Nokia 6210, just a few years before. But it sort of takes you by surprise. And I don't think we're quite at that point yet with open banking. But I think the signs are that we're definitely going to get there.
Actually, can I ask Nick Ogden to comment on this? Because you've obviously you've created multiple new things that have been, quite transformative. And given that lens, where are we with open banking?
I think two things. Firstly, everybody on this call probably remembers Bill Gates reckoning in sort of the late 90s that the internet was never going to work. So I'm not necessarily convinced that he's the best visionary to look back on where open banking was going to go to. But moving on, I think that we're in a very, very interesting space. A couple of things have happened. Sadly, we've gone through and are still in the dregs, hopefully, of a global pandemic. And, that's been, medically disastrous for the planet. One of the things that it's done, the unintended consequence, perhaps, is that everybody has had a digital education, unlike any other, that we could ever afford to give them. Everybody understands video conferencing. Everybody uses, whatever tools they choose to talk and use video calls. Everything's become on demand, on instant. And if you like, that's the way we use search engines. We expect an answer within a millisecond, but our life has become millisecond connected as a consequence of the pandemic. What that started to do, I think, is put immense pressure on proper digital delivery and customer service, which I mentioned earlier. And I think that, my view is that actually innovation has left shifted. Normally, when you do a business plan, everything right shifts and runs late. I actually think that a lot of innovation that's been hanging around is left shifting because of the consumer demand for access to data, access to services, new services, and things, frankly, that deliver value to, the Mrs. Smith of Three Acacia Gardens, that we always use as an example. And I think those companies that are able to turn that on quickly via open banking or whatever you want to call it, but it is a demonstrable customer service, will win the game. Where they then get to, unfortunately, is the point I made at the beginning, which is the fudge in the infrastructure then slows that down. And whilst the CMA 9 are supporting open banking and supporting innovation initiatives and all the rest of it, they're constrained by their own inability to actually have modern infrastructure. So it's circular. So I think that we need to push all of the corners, move the whole thing forward, recognize, I think that the key things, digital customer service and infrastructure that's fit for a digital world.
The infrastructure point is critical. And actually, if I can ask David to comment on this, because my understanding is that you're overseeing a suite of open banking tools and capabilities for MasterCard, and would love to hear your thoughts on some of what's changing. That Nick talked about, that the change in the market right now. Well, what are you seeing in terms of the banking customers that you have?
Yeah, no, I guess we are seeing lots of things around Europe and around the world. We're seeing overall a sort of a growth and appetite around open banking. So there's kind of a global, everyone is interested in it. I think what we are seeing in terms of that kind of view on the infrastructure and kind of maturity of the infrastructure and the robustness of the infrastructure is you're seeing different experiences in different markets with different banks. And I think that's what open banking does. By opening up data, it is providing a window into ultimately the bank's back-end systems and what they store and what they keep. And I think that's part of the challenge in terms of the desire to have the same propositions in different markets is in some ways limited by the kind of the differences between the sophistication of the banks in the background. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we spend a lot of our time having to work around for our clients is how you can deliver a unified experience, a unified data, if you like, from back-end systems that aren't built the same way. They're of different ages, they have different sophistications. And I think going forward, that's going to be kind of the challenge, if you like. One of the challenges of the ecosystem and within infrastructure is how do we level everything up in the most efficient way to allow full access and equal access, if you like, to the same services within markets and between markets.
That makes a lot of sense. And actually, so Nick Ogden talked a little bit about the consumer changing, and David, you just talked a little bit about how some of these banks and institutions are changing. If I can ask Charlotte to comment potentially on sort of the broader ecosystem and other players such as regulators or whoever there might be out there, as far as this dynamic that's in the marketplace right now, and what are your thoughts on where we are and where it's going?
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. And certainly, this, as everyone knows, this came out of a competition remedy with the CMA, but it's become so much more than that now as people have taken the mantle and gone into other areas. And FCA, the PSR, ICO on protection of data, all very key regulators, as is the government sponsorship behind this as well. So I think we have to recognise just how many other regulators are involved in this. And you look back on the Bank of England and their Future of Finance report and what they would like to see, and then what can this technology do. And I think we do always have to take the step back of what can the technology do and what can it deliver. And then who's going to set that agenda from which regulator, and how do those regulators come together? Because obviously, depending on the technology, it tends to go into different regulatory bodies. And I think that's quite the challenge in the UK and in many other markets as well. So industry has a role to play to look at what can come next. First, an extension of open banking beyond the competition remedy. But what do I get asked most weeks is what's happening with open finance, what's happening with smart data, what's the strategy there. I keep trying to remind everyone that we're the standard setting body for the implementation phase of the competition remedy, but everyone wants to understand what's happening next. So I think that's where we have the potential. The ecosystem is now wants to push this forward, and this isn't just the innovators and the entrepreneurs. This is the banks who've invested in bringing the technology to where it is today. And now they want to have a return on their investment. But that's going to have a different model, funding model, operating model, and strategic thinking, and potentially regulatory framework as well. But this comes back to my point when we started. So I think if we can't do this in the UK, where everybody does know the individuals, it's not just the organisations, the individuals there, and people coming together on sessions like this, and the work Helen's been doing to bring us all together, we're probably in the best position to deliver that, and not just to put out the thought leadership on it that probably other markets have taken forward, but actually take that thought leadership and execute on it and show to the rest of the world just what can be done by this incredible innovation that we're seeing in financial services in the UK. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time ahead as this comes out of the competition remedy and into the art of the possible to deliver those much needed consumer and business outcomes.
I think that showcasing to the world is a critical point. And I want to jump off on that to ask Nick down, as far as HMRC and sort of the UK companies in the global context, why does open banking matter to the HMRC in the global context?
It matters fundamentally, I suppose, because it's going to become a part of people's expectations. We need to be providing an efficient service. If we get it wrong, we're one of Nick's frictional costs, and we don't want to be that. We want to operate in a way that is as painless as possible for customers and contributes to the UK economy. And this does that. I mean, apart from anything else, it prevents the possibility of people making keying errors, which then mean we struggle to allocate their payments and sometimes have to go back and get more information to do that. Open banking sweeps all that away. And there's the potential to build on that and start to join things up. I'd like to see payments joined up with things like filing tax, which then crystallizes a liability, and give people options for how to do that and how to control that within HMRC's overall terms of trade. So it's very much a first step, I think, for us and for others.
Actually, if I can ask James Hickman to comment about, why does it actually matter to customers, or why should it matter?
Well, I think as Nick said, it's about consumer choice. It's about allowing them to slot a payment experience or a transactional experience into something they're used to doing. I think they're not. It's a more secure and respectful process for them, perhaps. And I think it's just built on that level of intuition. It's an immediate single interface experience. But it's a bit like why do you need a remote control for your television instead of being able to get up out of your sofa and press the channels on the TV itself, which I remember my parents always telling me I should be doing.
Unfortunately, we've become couch potatoes. So hopefully, open banking doesn't make us finance potatoes. And as I expected, this has been a great discussion, and we're running short on time. If I can ask each of you to give a quick answer in terms of, what are the next steps, or what do you see as the next trend in open banking? If I can start with Nick Ogden.
Okay, I think that we probably covered a lot of that. I think that it's incumbent upon Charlotte to continue her good work and to really push innovation, encourage people to get involved and to push this transition. I mean, an example of this is that the month that the pandemic started in the UK, March 2020, the Bank of England published a report that said that most of the lending to small to medium-sized companies had actually moved to the alternative finance market. And that today means that there's about £6 billion of lending a month that goes unsatisfied because it's not routed back. So I think all of that innovation needs to carry on in parallel with the rest of us working very, very hard with HM Treasury, Nick, so you can put a word in for us there, please, to actually move forward the changes that are required in market infrastructure, which mean changes in banking, which bounces back to Charlotte and her work with the CMA. So I think, we all on this call have the power to try and nudge this forward. And it's not just one thing, it's a collaborative effort of everybody doing their own thing, but marching in time.
How about Nick Down? How do we punch it forward? Where's the forward now?
I think it's maybe open banking becoming a kind of financial friend to people and small businesses, letting them pull together their financial and business affairs, set parameters so that they can focus on what's important to them and not just get bombarded by more and more unfiltered data. And I think if we can do that has just tremendous power and will generate an awful lot of take-up.
And handing it over to David.
Yeah, I think it is in that world of data. I think what open banking opens up is some of the data, but actually to get the really compelling propositions that would add huge amount of value, you've got to start pulling in data from other sources. And I think that we're seeing it in markets around the world like Australia. The US arguably have been scraping it for years, but I think that's kind of the interesting angle. I think is to really leverage the power. We've got to open up more data sources and combine them to create those compelling propositions that Nick started to talk about there.
And I'm going to be having a further session with James, so let me close off this discussion with Charlotte. Charlotte, bring us home.
I mean, we have to remember what's going to be the tipping point. So a lot of people said 4.5 million users, despite growing up 1 million every 6 months, an incredible pace now, and open banking payments continue to really show the hockey stick of what's potential. We don't need the whole population to adopt it, because there will be a tipping point where you'll go, everyone else around you is using it, and therefore you're going to use it too. And what is that tipping point? So to James, and your point of remote control, and I think many of us would sit there switching around and then saying, do we trust the remote control? No, we'll still go for TV because it's quicker, because we don't know where to point at it. It skips the point where everyone goes, why are you doing that when you can use the remote control? So there will become a time quite soon where everybody will know someone who's using this. Everyone will tell them that this is about sharing it with a trusted provider. I think that's what we have to remember. It's not putting all of your data into a comparison website that then bombards you for the end of time on the renewals of all your insurance. You're actually sending it to an insurance provider, and it's easy, and it's there, and it's your data, and that's giving you a better financial services experience. So if that, as everyone said during the pandemic, everyone referred to their parents and how they were managing with online banking or online shopping. Many of them do now use these comparison websites. And if you said to them, okay, would you trust open banking? Oh no, I wouldn't give away my data. And you think of how much data they give away when they fill those forms in. And that's where it is. Imagine that automated. You didn't have to do that every time, and you're sharing it, and it's trusted, and that's delivering you the outcome. And I don't think it's far away. I think we're going to get there sooner than everyone thinks.
So that's a brilliant way to end this world-class panel, and want to thank Nick Ogden, Charlotte Croswell, David Head, Nick Down for being part of this. Really appreciated your insights here, and hopefully, and I'm sure the audience out there appreciates it as well too. So a virtual clap, round of applause for all of you. And now it's on to the fun part, another fun part. We still got the campfire going, and now we're shining the spotlight on EcoSpend. So without further ado, Mr. James Hickman, are you ready?
I am. I'm really sorry I didn't get the memo about the shades.
See, you're the one that's bringing the light, so I need it to protect it. You're the source of the light, so you don't have to worry about that. So you have 1 minute to share your elevator pitch and most successful use case thus far. Ready? Go.
I guess so. Thank you.
3, 2, 1, go.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Sanjeev. And Helen, thank you so much, and to your team as well for having EcoSpend on this amazing, illustrious panel. So we're EcoSpend, we're a TPP. We were founded end of 2017. We're FCA authorized for AIS and PIS, which is payments and data, as I'm sure you know. And we really launched our commercial strategy towards the end of 2020. And our first thing we ever did was we threw our hat into the ring for the HMRC tender. And we found ourselves in the final against some very large blue chip global brands. And we thought, well, we must be doing something right here. The fact that we're in this company. Bizarrely and amazingly, we won. So January, we got the award, January last year, exactly a year ago. We started the build. We went live on the HMRC website in March the 24th with self-assessment. We then rolled out very gradually, very cautiously, the other heads of duty, things like VAT, corporation tax, PAYE. I think we're now live with 10 heads of duty. And I'm very proud to say it is the absolute optimum Rolls Royce of open banking use cases. And a huge respect and gratitude to Nick and his team for getting us to this point. So we are excited about what we're doing in the public sector, the volumes we're delivering, the benefits that we're seeing come through. And we also have a growing number of private sector clients across the utility space, e-commerce, the media and financial services and so on. So we are very proud to be part of this rising tide of young British SMEs, hopefully driving the agenda, disrupting the incumbents and growing the open banking thing, although let's call it something else one day. Thanks.
All right. Well, so I'm going to be a bit more of a stickler on the time clock. I think the next.
That was probably too long.
But can you tell us in 1 minute what challenge your use case is trying to solve? Why is it important to consumers? 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so the use case is obviously HMRC, and I think the two key. Well, let's look at the transaction fee savings. I'm sure there are many of those given the volumes that we've delivered. But as Nick mentioned earlier on, I think the thing we should be most proud of is the fact we've seen 100% reconciliation. So not one single payment has gone missing, and I gather that's quite unusual. I gather that HMRC does see payments go missing. So if everyone paid with open banking, there would be no reconciliation mistakes, which I think is a huge opportunity in terms of cost and savings. And the thing I like most of all, because we've talked a lot about the consumer benefits, is the fact that we haven't actually had one call or email from a customer asking us or complaining about it. So I can't think of another payments business that's generated that many billions of pounds of payments and not had to interact with customers. So the technology has just worked.
Amazing. Lower costs, better experiences. What more can you ask for? That's great. Now on to the third and final question. In 1 minute, how do you think your use case can evolve in the upcoming months? What are your objectives? 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, I think it's to continue to grow our payments capability. And one of the things we've just launched literally this week, which we're very excited about, is what we call our decoupled journey. And I saw it today for the first time, and it's absolutely stunning in that you can start the payment journey on your desktop. You can scan a QR code on the HMRC website, and you can complete the journey on your mobile, which is a much more intuitive and seamless process. So that's an example of the products and services that we're building. And we're also excited to be building for all our clients a range of different products around data, things like digital identity and security services or security products using your bank ID, building credit decisioning and affordability products and arrangements, and ultimately replacing legacy manual processes with this new digital technology. And I think we as a business, we're growing fast, we're recruiting like mad, and we're just very excited about thinking we're just we're at 1% here. We're just scratching the surface of the possibilities of this incredible technology.
That sounds great. And thank you, James. That I'm glad I had these sunglasses.
Yeah,
I needed them. With that, it's my pleasure to hand it back to Helen. Helen, once again, thank you for letting me be part of this. I had a lot of fun. Hopefully you did too.
Our pleasure, Sanjeev. Genius, absolute genius. We certainly will be keeping that section again. Thank you. Never enough time. So how do I follow that? Well, it's got to be with a heartfelt thank you to Sanjeev, to you, and to all our friends at Money 2020, and to our amazing panel, John and Ron at the top, and James, David, and both Nicks, and Charlotte, a big thank you to you, and all power to your team. You all should be immensely proud of getting us all to where we are today. So well done all. Okay, so we will be posting this content on our social media channels. So please do share with your colleagues. And if you can encourage them to share that too, that would be wonderful. And also to download the Megatrends report that you can see on the GIF below. That certainly has set the benchmark for this year. We are slightly over time, so that all that remains for me is to thank everybody, and especially the very dedicated OBE team who work probably harder behind the scenes than anybody realizes. Thank you guys, and you inspire me every single day, you truly do. I would also like to say a thank you to our global audience for joining us. Take care, and wishing you the very, very best of health. Bye for now.